The soft hum of the dishwasher filled the quiet apartment as Emily sat on her couch, her laptop still open from work. The day had been long, but there was something comforting about evenings like this. The silence, the cup of tea cooling beside her, the faint rain tapping against the window. She was halfway through an email when her phone buzzed. Family group chat. The Martins. She smiled. That chat had been dead for months, maybe longer. She opened it instantly. Mom. Big news, everyone. We're hosting a family reunion next weekend at the lake house. It's been too long. Let's make this one special. Emily's heart lifted. The lake house. She hadn't been there since she was 22. Back when summers meant campfires, cousins, and her grandmother's blueberry pie cooling on the porch. Those memories were golden, untainted by everything that came later. She typed quickly, her fingers trembling with warmth. Emily, this is amazing news. I can't wait to see everyone. I've missed you all so much. A typing bubble appeared beneath her message. Then it vanished, then appeared again, and vanished again. Seconds later, another notification popped up. Claire, you're not invited. For a moment, Emily just stared at the screen. The text blinked up at her, absurd and sharp, like a joke that didn't make sense. She forced a laugh, shaking her head. Classic Claire. Her older sister had always been sarcastic, the kind who could turn a compliment into a weapon with a single smirk. Emily, haha, very funny. I'll bring dessert. She waited for the laughing emoji for her mom to chime in with, Of course you're invited, honey. But nothing came. The group went silent. Her smile faltered. A few minutes later, her uncle reacted to Mom's original message with a thumbs-up emoji. Her cousin dropped a "can't wait." Her mom sent a heart. But not a single person acknowledged Emily's message. Her chest tightened. That cold, familiar ache she thought she'd buried years ago began to stir. She tried again. Emily, just checking. The reunion is for everyone, right? Still nothing. The typing bubble flickered once more. This time it was her mother. Relief washed over her, until the words appeared. Mom, sweetheart, maybe we should talk later, okay? Emily's pulse quickened. Talk later? About what? Emily, is everything okay? Why would Claire say I'm not invited? No response. Emily set her phone down and rubbed her temples. The rain outside thickened into a steady downpour, and the reflection of her living room blurred against the window. A strange mix of anxiety and disbelief coiled in her stomach. Her relationship with her family had always been delicate. Claire was the golden one, the perfect daughter who followed every rule, hosted dinner parties, and still lived just 10 minutes from their parents. Emily, meanwhile, had always been the wanderer. She moved to the city, chased an art career that never quite took off, and spoke her mind too often for her family's liking. Still, being uninvited to a reunion? That was cruel even for Claire. She picked up her phone again and hit call Mom. The ringtone felt endless. Then came the click of connection. Hello? Her mother's voice came, soft but tense. Mom, what's going on? Emily tried to sound calm. I saw the messages. Did Claire mean it? Why would she say that? A long silence followed. She could hear faint chatter in the background, her father's voice, the sound of a TV, dishes clinking. Her mother sighed. Emily, honey, it's complicated. What does that mean? It's just... Another pause. Your sister thinks it might be better if you sit this one out. There's been so much tension lately, and I don't want any conflict. We just want a peaceful weekend. Emily froze. A peaceful weekend without me? That's not what I said. Yes, it is, Emily snapped, the hurt bubbling through her voice. What tension, Mom? I haven't even spoken to Claire in months. Please don't raise your voice. Emily pressed a hand to her forehead, breathing hard. So you're really telling me not to come? Her mother's next words came quietly, like a knife sliding between ribs. Emily, maybe it's best if you don't come this year. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry. Right, got it. Sweetheart, but she hung up. For a moment, she sat there in the dim glow of the living room, staring at her phone screen, her reflection trembling in the glass. The word "not invited" replayed in her mind like a cruel echo. Then, slowly, she set the phone down and whispered into the quiet, "What did I ever do that was so unforgivable?" Her tea had gone cold. The dishwasher beeped in the background, but she didn't move. She sat there long after midnight, the rain beating harder, feeling smaller than she had in years, like a child left behind while everyone else drove away. As she finally stood to turn off the lights, her phone buzzed again, a single message. "Claire, don't make this harder than it already is." Emily's hand trembled as she read it. She didn't reply. But deep down, something in her shifted. The first spark of anger, the first flicker of determination that would soon change everything. The rain hadn't stopped. By morning, it had turned the streets into mirrors, reflecting a sky that looked as gray as Emily felt. She hadn't slept, not really. Every time she closed her eyes, her mother's voice echoed in her head. "Maybe it's best if you don't come this year." She made coffee she didn't drink, checked her phone too many times, and stared at the unread messages in the family group chat that she still wasn't brave enough to open again. Around 9, her phone buzzed. A single notification, Mom calling. Her hand hovered over the screen, then she answered. "Hi, Mom." Her mother's voice was careful, too light. "I just wanted to check in. You seemed upset last night?" Emily let out a hollow laugh. "You think?" "Sweetheart, please don't be sarcastic. I don't want this to become another what?" Emily interrupted. "Another reason for you to pretend I'm the problem?" The silence that followed was long and familiar. Her mother exhaled. "You know things haven't been the same since Grandma passed. People grieve differently. Emotions were high. You said some hurtful things?" Emily's chest tightened. "I defended myself. There's a difference." Her mother's tone softened, almost pitying. "You accused your sister of lying, Emily." "Because she did lie," Emily said, her voice breaking. "About the will, about what Grandma left behind. She twisted everything to make me look greedy." "Enough," her mother said sharply, and that tone, that clipped, cold tone, dragged Emily straight back to childhood dinners where she'd been told to keep her voice down, while Claire was allowed to shout. The call ended soon after. Emily sat there in silence, gripping her coffee mug until her knuckles turned white. The past year played in her mind like a cruel film. The fight over their grandmother's estate, Claire's tears, her parents' quiet siding with her, and Emily standing alone, accused of being jealous, dramatic, selfish. Her grandmother had been the only one who truly saw her, the only one who'd told her she was enough, even when no one else did. When she died, it felt like the last piece of home had gone with her. And now, even the reunion, the one event that used to bring everyone together, was being used to push her further away. She opened her phone again and scrolled through old photos. There was one from a reunion 10 years ago. Emily, Claire, their cousins by the lake, all grinning. Claire's arm was slung around her shoulder. Back then, her smile had felt real. Now, it just looked like a stranger's face. By noon, Emily couldn't sit still anymore. She threw on her coat, grabbed her keys, and started driving. No real plan, just movement. The roads out of the city blurred past, slick with rain, and soon she found herself on the familiar highway that led home. She hadn't been to her parents' house in nearly a year, but every mile closer brought back the smell of pine, the curve of the hill that overlooked the lake, the memories of summers that once felt endless. When she finally pulled up near the old cul-de-sac, she parked across from the house. The sight hit her harder than she expected. Through the front windows, she could see them, her parents, bustling around the living room, setting out decorations. Her father carried boxes of tablecloths. Her mother arranged flowers, and Claire, perfect, polished Claire, was there too, laughing with a glass of wine in her hand as if nothing in the world had ever hurt her. Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to believe this was some misunderstanding, that if she just walked up, if she just explained, Everything would make sense. But when she looked closer, she saw something that made her heart drop. The reunion banner, bright and hand-painted, read, "Welcome home." Family, beneath it, every cousin, aunt, and uncle's name was listed on little cards pinned to a corkboard near the entryway. Every name except hers. She sat in the car for nearly 10 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, tears blurring her vision. Then slowly she wiped them away and took a shaky breath. "No," she whispered. "Not again." This time she wouldn't let them erase her. She got out of the car, pulled up her hood, and walked toward the porch. The rain was falling harder now, dripping from her coat, pooling around her shoes. She could see her reflection in the window. Tired eyes, trembling lips, but still standing. She raised her hand to knock, but before she could, the front door opened slightly. Her mother's face appeared, pale, startled, and worried. "Emily?" Emily froze, caught halfway between hope and heartbreak. "Mom," she whispered, "can we talk?" Her mother's expression flickered, guilt, then fear, then something almost rehearsed. "Now's not a good time," she said softly. Behind her, Claire's voice floated from the living room. "Who's at the door?" And then Claire appeared. Her sister's smile faltered when she saw her. Then slowly, that same mocking smirk returned. "Well," Claire said, arms crossed. "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" Emily stared at her, rain dripping from her hair, her heart breaking and hardening at the same time. "I just want to know why," she said quietly. "Why am I the one being pushed out?" Claire tilted her head. "Maybe you should ask yourself that." Before Emily could answer, her mother stepped between them. "Enough," she whispered sharply, but not to Claire, to her. Emily took a step back. The world felt suddenly smaller, colder, and as the door slowly closed, she saw her father glance toward her from across the room, but he didn't move, didn't say a word. The latch clicked. Emily stood there on the porch, numb and shaking. The rain blurred everything, but one thought burned clear in her mind. There was more to this. Something deeper than family tension. Something they were hiding, and she was going to find out what it was. The rain had eased into a mist by the time Emily drove back to her apartment, but the storm inside her hadn't settled. Her sister's voice, smug, sharp, and final, still echoed in her head. "Maybe you should ask yourself that." She replayed the moment her father looked at her, silent, complicit, and the way her mother's hand trembled as she closed the door. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was fear. Something was being kept from her. That night, Emily didn't bother changing out of her wet clothes. She sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through old emails, bank records, anything that might hint at what Claire had done with their grandmother's inheritance. The fight over that money had been the start of everything. She knew it. Her grandmother's will had been clear, everything divided equally. But after her death, Claire claimed Grandma had changed it, that Emily wasn't responsible enough to manage her share. The lawyer, conveniently, was Claire's friend's father. Emily had been too stunned then, too heartbroken to fight. But now, it all felt like a carefully woven lie. By morning, her exhaustion had hardened into resolve. Emily showered, dressed simply, and drove back to her parents' neighborhood. She didn't even care how it looked. She needed answers, not whispers, not guilt, not silence. When she arrived, the driveway was full. Cars lined the curb, and the sound of laughter spilled from the house. The reunion had already started. She parked across the street again, her heartbeat a drum in her ears. Through the living room window, she could see people hugging, kids running, someone playing music. A string of fairy lights glowed across the porch. It was supposed to be her family, her weekend too. She stepped out of the car and walked toward the house. Every step felt heavier than the last, her shoes crunching on the gravel. At the door, she paused, for a second, almost turning back. Then she took a deep breath and knocked. The laughter inside dimmed. She heard movement, the sound of heels, a hushed voice. Then the door opened. Her mother stood there, wearing her favorite blue sweater, eyes wide and startled. "Emily," she said softly. "You shouldn't have come." "I had to," Emily said. "You wouldn't talk to me. You wouldn't explain." Her mother glanced over her shoulder. "Please, not now. People are here." "I'm people," Emily snapped before she could stop herself. Behind her mother, Claire appeared, dressed in cream with a glass of wine in hand. Her lips curled into a smirk. "Oh," she said sweetly. "You decided to crash the party." "Don't start," Emily said. "I just want to understand why I'm not welcome in my own family." Claire laughed, that cruel, airy laugh that always made Emily feel 10 years old again. "Because you made it clear you don't want to be part of this family. Remember the way you screamed at Mom after the will reading? The way you said we were all liars?" "That's not what happened." Her father appeared now, standing a few feet back, his hands in his pockets. "He didn't say a word. Claire forged Grandma's letter," Emily said, her voice shaking. "You told everyone she changed the will, but she didn't. She trusted me. You—" "Enough." Her father's voice was low, sharp, the kind that silenced rooms. Emily turned to him. "Dad, please, you know the truth. Tell me why you're doing this." He looked away. "You've caused enough embarrassment for this family, Emily." The words hit harder than she expected. "Embarrassment?" she repeated, her throat dry. "You're embarrassed by me?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Please, Emily, don't make a scene." And then, without another word, her father stepped forward and gently, firmly, closed the door. The latch clicked. The laughter inside began again, muffled through the wood. Emily stood there for a long time, her breath fogging in the cool air. Her heart pounded, not with sadness now, but with something sharper. Anger. She turned and walked to her car, each step unsteady, her vision blurring with tears. When she got inside, she gripped the steering wheel, shaking. For years, she had told herself her family's love was conditional, that if she were quieter, more obedient, more like Claire, they would finally see her. But now she understood. It wasn't about who she was. It was about what she knew. She started the car but didn't drive away immediately. Instead, she looked back at the glowing house one more time, her family's laughter, the clinking glasses, the illusion of warmth, and felt something inside her snap. If they thought they could erase her, they were wrong. She wiped her eyes, breathing hard, and started driving. Not toward her apartment, but toward the old part of town, the one her grandmother used to call home. A thought had struck her as the door shut, a half-remembered conversation from years ago, one she'd dismissed at the time. Her grandmother's voice, warm and trembling. "If they ever try to twist things, Emmy, there's something in the attic, something that will make it right." Emily gripped the wheel tighter. Maybe it was a memory. Maybe it was desperation. But deep down, she knew. This wasn't over. The truth was still out there, and she was going to find it. The road to her grandmother's old house wound through pine trees and forgotten mailboxes. By the time Emily pulled up to the property, dusk had begun to settle. That strange hour when the world looks both alive and fading. The house had been sold years ago after her grandmother passed. But Emily knew the back entrance was still unlocked. The new owners hadn't moved in yet. She'd checked the real estate listing months ago, just out of nostalgia. Now, she was grateful for that small piece of luck. The air smelled of wet earth and pine needles. She parked by the curb, heart pounding, and stared at the house. White paint peeling, porch light dead, curtains fluttering through cracked windows. Her grandmother's house. The one where she had spent her best summers. The one that had felt like safety. Now, it looked like a memory that didn't want to be disturbed. Still, she climbed the porch steps, the wood creaking beneath her shoes. When she turned the knob, it gave way with a faint click. Inside, the air was cold and still. Dust floated in the fading light seeping through the curtains. Her grandmother's floral wallpaper had peeled in long strips, exposing the dry plaster beneath. The smell of old wood and faint lavender still lingered. For a moment, Emily just stood there, her chest aching. The quiet was heavy, like the house was holding its breath. "Hi." "Grandma," she whispered into the emptiness. Her voice echoed softly through the halls. She found her way upstairs, past the worn carpet to the small door at the end of the hallway, the attic. The door she hadn't opened since she was a child. It took a few tries before the latch released. The door creaked open, releasing a puff of dust that made her cough. She reached for the chain hanging from the ceiling, tugging it until a dim bulb flickered to life, casting golden shadows across the room. Everything was exactly how she remembered. The wooden trunks. The old sewing machine. Stacks of boxes labeled in her grandmother's neat handwriting. Photos, letters, keepsakes. Emily ran her fingers across one box until she found one labeled personal. Her heart skipped. She sat cross-legged on the floor and lifted the lid. Inside were envelopes, cards, and one small leather-bound journal tied with a ribbon. Her hands trembled as she untied it. The first few pages were filled with dates and notes, gentle, mundane things. Recipes, birthdays, gardening lists. But halfway through, a folded letter was tucked between the pages, sealed, yellowed, and addressed in her grandmother's handwriting, "To my granddaughter, Emily." Emily froze. The world seemed to tilt. Her breath hitched as she broke the seal, unfolding the fragile paper. The ink had faded in places, but the handwriting was clear, familiar, and kind. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to tell you myself. I need you to know something important. Something I couldn't trust anyone else with, not even your parents. After your grandfather passed, I made arrangements for the inheritance. I wanted everything to be fair. You and Claire were both supposed to receive equal shares, not just of the money, but of the house, my jewelry, everything that represented the life I built. But Claire found out about the will before it was finalized. She came to me one night in tears, saying she needed more, that your parents thought you'd waste yours chasing art. I didn't agree. But when I became sick, I signed a temporary note letting her access some funds to manage the house until I recovered. I never meant for it to be permanent. But she kept that document and, I believe, changed it after I passed. Your parents didn't question it. I suspect they thought it was what I wanted. It wasn't. Everything I had was meant to be shared equally. You deserved better than how they've treated you. You always have. If this truth ever matters, if they ever make you feel small, remember this letter. You have every right to stand tall, Emmy. You are my heart. With love, always, Grandma Margaret." Emily's tears blurred the words. She pressed the letter to her chest, trembling, a small sob escaping her lips. For years she had doubted herself, believed the story Claire spun, that she was too impulsive, too emotional, too ungrateful. And now here it was, proof. Her grandmother had known. Her grandmother had tried to protect her. Emily looked around the attic, every shadow and object suddenly alive with memory. The old rocking chair, the chest filled with holiday ornaments, the photographs yellowing on the walls. This wasn't just her grandmother's home. It was her truth buried in wood and dust. She sat there for a long time, the letter resting in her lap, the bulb flickering above her. Outside, the wind howled softly, and the first streaks of moonlight cut through the cracks of the window pane. Her mind raced. She could expose everything, show the letter, tell the family what Claire did. But then what? Would they listen? Would they twist it again? She wiped her eyes and folded the letter carefully, sliding it into her jacket pocket. Her voice shook as she whispered into the dark, "You were right, Grandma. They can't hide forever." As she descended the creaking attic stairs, a calm she hadn't felt in years began to take hold. The pain was still there, but beneath it, a strength was waking up. Tomorrow was the second day of the reunion. Everyone would still be there, and this time she wouldn't be knocking to ask for an explanation. She'd be walking in with the truth. Morning light spilled across the dashboard as Emily drove back toward the lake. She hadn't slept again, her mind too full, her chest too heavy. But this time the exhaustion didn't feel like weakness. It felt like focus. The letter sat beside her on the passenger seat, folded neatly in an old envelope. Every time she glanced at it, her grandmother's words echoed through her head like a heartbeat. "You have every right to stand tall, Emmy." The closer she got to her parents' house, the more her stomach twisted, a mix of dread and resolve. She'd played this scene in her head 100 times, her family's faces when they saw her, the whispers, the tension. But she wasn't going there to argue. She was going there to end it. As she pulled into the familiar neighborhood, the laughter reached her before the house came into view. Cars filled the driveway again. The front lawn was decorated with balloons. She could see a few relatives outside, cousins, aunts, chatting with drinks in hand, completely unaware of the storm that was about to walk through their door. Emily parked across the street and took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly as she grabbed the letter, but her steps were steady. When she reached the porch, the sounds of laughter dimmed, the way they always do when something changes the air. Her cousin Hannah was the first to notice her. "Emily?" she said softly, eyes widening. "You came," Emily nodded. "Yeah, I did." Hannah looked uncertain but didn't stop her. And that small act, that lack of resistance, gave Emily just enough strength to turn the knob and walk in. The living room went silent. Dozens of familiar faces turned toward her, her uncles mid-conversation, her father by the window, her mother at the table arranging flowers. And at the center of it all, Claire. She looked exactly the same as yesterday, calm, polished, sure of herself. Until she saw what was in Emily's hand, her expression shifted. The color drained from her face for just a moment. "Emily," her mother whispered, standing quickly. "This isn't the time." "Yes," Emily said, her voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. "It is." She took another step forward. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to tell the truth." Claire set her wine glass down, forcing a laugh. "Oh, please, don't do this here." But Emily was already unfolding the letter. The soft crackle of the old paper was the only sound in the room. "I found this in Grandma's attic," she said, her voice shaking slightly but growing stronger with every word. "It's a letter, one she wrote to me, before she died." Her father frowned. "Emily, what are you—" "I think everyone should hear it." And then she began to read. Her voice trembled on the first lines. "My dearest Emily." But by the second paragraph, something shifted. The words flowed out like a flood breaking through years of silence. Every eye was on her. The letter told everything. The forged note, the manipulation, the betrayal. Her grandmother's disappointment. Her final wish for fairness. When Emily reached the last line, "You have every right to stand tall. Emmy, you are my heart." Her voice cracked, but she didn't look away. For a moment, the room was utterly still. Then someone whispered, "Oh my God." Her uncle, the one who'd handled the estate paperwork, stood frozen. "That's impossible," he said quietly. "The will was forged," Emily finished. "By Claire." Claire's face was white now, but she forced another laugh. "This is ridiculous. That letter could be fake. She probably wrote it herself." Emily met her gaze, calm, unflinching. "It's in Grandma's handwriting. Her ink, her stationery. You want to test it?" "Go ahead," murmurs spread through the room. Her mother's hands trembled as she reached for the letter, but Emily didn't let go. "No," Emily said softly. "You don't get to hold it. Not after what you let her do." "Emily, stop," her father said. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," Emily said again, louder now. "You're embarrassed because you let her steal from me, from Grandma, and you pretended it was okay." Her voice broke, but she didn't care. "You taught me to tell the truth, Dad. You said family meant loyalty. But when she lied, when she stole, you stayed quiet because she was easier to love. Her father's jaw tightened, his eyes flickering with guilt he couldn't hide. Claire finally snapped. "Oh, get over yourself. You think Grandma loved you more just because you painted her stupid pictures and listened to her stories? She gave me control because she trusted me." "No," Emily said quietly, her tears spilling over. "She gave you control because you begged her to. And then you turned her kindness into power." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then someone spoke. Hannah again, her voice small but firm. "I think we should see that letter," she said. "If it's real, we all deserve to know." Several others nodded. Aunts, cousins, even the uncle who'd handled the documents. Claire took a step back, panic flickering across her face. "You're not serious," but it was too late. The family had turned. Emily looked around the room, her chest rising and falling, realizing that for the first time in years, they were listening. She set the letter down on the table. "Read it," she said simply, "and then decide who's been lying." Her father opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Her mother looked near tears. Claire stared at her, hatred, fear, and something else. Shame. Emily turned to leave. "I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came to stop pretending." She walked toward the door, her steps steady, her shoulders squared. The air felt lighter with every step. Behind her, the house erupted in whispers and confusion. Someone called her name, but she didn't turn back. As she stepped out into the sunlight, she could almost hear her grandmother's voice again. Soft, warm, proud. "Stand tall, Emmy," and she did. The air outside was cold and sharp, the kind that burned a little when you breathed it in. Emily stood by her car for a long moment, the laughter and chaos from the house behind her replaced by something else: murmurs, raised voices, the sound of a family reckoning with truth. She didn't look back. For years, that house had been her whole world, her source of love, her prison of silence. And now it stood behind her, smaller somehow. Emily opened the car door and sat inside, gripping the steering wheel with both hands. She didn't cry this time. She'd cried enough for a lifetime. Instead, she let herself feel the strange, new quiet that followed the storm. It wasn't peace yet, but it was the beginning of it. By the next morning, the messages started. Her cousin Hannah sent the first one. They read the letter. "Everyone's in shock. Claire's gone. She left after arguing with your parents. Uncle Mike says he's reopening the estate review." Emily stared at the words for a long time. Her heart thudded hard in her chest. Part disbelief, part relief. A few hours later, another text came. This time from her mother. "Emily, can we talk, please? Just us." She didn't answer right away. The temptation to ignore it was strong, to walk away and never look back. But the child in her, the one who had spent years begging to be seen, needed to know if that door could still open, so she agreed. They met at the small cafe by the lake, the same one her grandmother used to take her to as a kid. The smell of coffee and cinnamon hit her like a memory. Warmth wrapped in sorrow. Her mother was already there, sitting at the corner table, hands clasped tightly around a mug she hadn't touched. "Hi," Emily said softly. Her mother looked up, eyes red and tired. "Hi, sweetheart." The word sweetheart hurt more than she expected. It had been years since she'd heard it without sarcasm or hesitation. They sat in silence for a few moments. Then her mother spoke. "You blindsided us," she said, her voice trembling. "The way you showed up, the letter, it was so public, so final." Emily took a deep breath. "It had to be. You wouldn't have listened otherwise." Her mother looked down, tears slipping free. "You're right," she whispered. "We wouldn't have. We didn't want to believe Claire could do something like that. She always seemed so in control." "She was in control," Emily said quietly. "Of everything," her mother nodded slowly. "She came home last night, for a few minutes. She was furious. She said you ruined everything." Emily's throat tightened. "And what did you say?" Her mother hesitated. "I told her maybe it was time everything did get ruined. Maybe it was never right to begin with. That broke something inside Emily, but in a good way. A pressure she'd carried for years finally released. Her mother reached across the table, hand shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For not seeing it. For making you feel like you didn't belong. Your father? He's struggling too. We both are." Emily looked at her mother's hand but didn't take it. "You don't have to apologize for him," she said gently. "Just don't pretend anymore. Not for me, not for her." "I won't," her mother said, tears spilling freely now. "We found more letters in Grandma's boxes." "You were right about everything." Emily blinked, stunned. "What?" Her mother nodded. "Your uncle came by this morning with them. One even has Claire's handwriting on the back. A list of the assets she wanted moved before Grandma passed. It's being turned over to the lawyer." For the first time, Emily smiled. Small, fragile, but real. "So, she's finally going to face it," she said quietly. Her mother nodded again. "Yes, and we're going to make it right. Not just with the estate, with you." Later that evening, Emily returned to her grandmother's old house by the lake. The key still worked, though the door creaked louder than she remembered. The rooms were quiet, filled with dust and sunlight, the smell of cedar and old books. She wandered through slowly, the kitchen where they'd baked pies, the living room where they'd sat for hours listening to rain. Every corner held echoes of a life that had once been full of warmth. On the small table near the window, her grandmother's teacup still sat, delicate and cracked. Emily picked it up, brushing her thumb along the rim. "I did it, Grandma," she whispered. "They finally know." She sat down at the window seat, watching the lake shimmer under the afternoon sun. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider in this house. She felt like she belonged here, not because anyone said she did, but because she finally believed it. She pulled out her sketchbook, the same one she'd been too afraid to open for years, and began to draw. Not out of anger or loneliness this time, but peace. The pencil glided across the page, shaping the gentle curve of a face, her grandmother's, smiling, eyes kind, and as she drew, a small smile spread across Emily's lips. That night, as she locked the door and stepped back outside, her phone buzzed again. A message from Hannah, Claire's lawyer, called. She confessed. "Everything you said was true." Emily exhaled slowly, the tension melting from her shoulders. The stars above the lake glimmered like tiny lights of approval. She whispered into the night, "Stand tall, Emmy." And this time, it wasn't her grandmother's voice she heard. It was her own.